I never thought coming home to Willow Creek for summer break would end up being one of the most confusing, emotionally warped experiences of my life. I was 20, fresh off finals, and honestly just looking forward to a few months of home-cooked meals and uninterrupted sleep. My parents lived in a quiet suburb, cookie-cutter houses, trimmed lawns, the kind of place where nothing ever really happens. But things were different this time. The house didn't feel the same, or maybe I didn't. My dad, Michael, was working more than ever. He's always been distant, never abusive or cruel, just not present. I'd be in the living room watching TV and barely hear the front door open as he got home, briefcase in hand, suit still perfect, and eyes scanning through me like I wasn't even there. He barely talked to Sarah either. They existed side by side, not together. You notice these things more when you've been away. My mom, Sarah, on the other hand, was acting strange, not in any obvious way. She still made breakfast, still asked about my day, but there was something extra in her voice, too, lower, like she was searching for something in me that she'd stopped expecting from him. She was beautiful too, that's not something I ever thought about before, but I noticed it now. The way her hair curled at her collarbone, how she smelled like lavender and something sweet, how she started wearing tank tops and tight shorts around the house when it got warmer. I tried not to think about it, but my mind lingered longer than I liked. The first thing that made me pause happened in the bathroom. It was a Wednesday. I had just gotten out of the shower and was wrapped in a towel, brushing my teeth. She walked in without knocking. Her eyes flicked over me for half a second, too fast to be anything but noticed, and she smiled. "Oh, sorry," she said, not looking sorry at all. "Didn't think you'd still be in here." I told her it was fine, quickly turned back to the mirror, pretending like I wasn't hyper-aware of how close she stood behind me. She walked to the sink next to mine, leaned forward, and started wiping off makeup. The way her robe slipped off her shoulder revealed just enough skin to make me uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything, just finished brushing and left, heart pounding for no reason I could explain. After that, it became a pattern, not every day, but enough to notice. She'd walk into the bathroom while I was shaving or showering. Each time, she had an excuse, grabbing her face cream, needing to clean the mirror, but each time, I felt her presence like static in the air. Once, she came in while I was halfway dressed and said, "Don't be shy, I used to change your diapers." I laughed it off, but that line sat wrong with me. At night, we started watching TV together. Michael was never around, he'd work late or be out on client dinners. I caught his phone lighting up once with a message from a woman I didn't recognize. I didn't confront him, didn't say anything, but maybe she knew. Maybe that's why she sat closer to me on the couch, sometimes laying her head on my shoulder, her hair brushing my neck. I'd freeze up, but I didn't move away. We had wine one night. She poured me a glass, said, "You're old enough now, right?" We talked for hours. She told me stories from her college years I'd never heard before, about how wild she used to be, how she gave it all up when she married Michael. Her voice cracked a little when she said, "Sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I hadn't settled so soon." There was a long pause. I didn't know what to say. She reached out, brushed something off my cheek that wasn't there, and smiled. I felt something shift inside me, something quiet and wrong, but I didn't stop it. One morning, I was brushing my teeth again. She walked in wearing just a long t-shirt, I assumed, but there was no bra underneath. I looked away quickly. She noticed. "You don't have to be so uptight," she said, laughing softly. I mumbled something and rinsed my mouth. She stood next to me at the sink, her arm brushing mine, not moving away, her eyes locked on mine in the mirror. I forced myself not to look, but I felt her watching me. After she left, I sat on the edge of the tub, towel still around my waist, and just stared at the wall. My skin felt hot, my head was spinning. Nothing had happened, but something had definitely changed. The lines between maternal care and something else were starting to blur, and I didn't know how to stop it, or if I even wanted to. The worst part was how normal everything looked from the outside. She still made eggs in the morning, still reminded me to pick up my laundry, but every word she spoke now seemed loaded. Every look lasted too long, and the bathroom, the most mundane part of our house, had started to feel like a stage for something I wasn't ready to name. I began to avoid her, left the house more, took long walks, went to the gym just to kill time, but she noticed. One afternoon, she caught me at the door. "Everything okay?" she asked. "You've been acting distant." I said I was fine, just tired. She stepped closer, too close, placed her hand on my cheek. "I miss talking to you," she whispered. "You're the only one in this house who makes me feel seen." I didn't know what to say. My breath caught. Her hand lingered for a second too long, then she smiled again, like nothing happened, and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going over every moment, every word, every accidental brush of skin. There were no clear lines anymore, just a feeling that something was coming, something we both knew neither of us would be able to take back. After that night, things didn't just continue, they escalated, slowly, quietly, so carefully that if I told someone, it would sound like I was exaggerating, but I wasn't. It was the way she started finding reasons to touch me more, a hand on my knee when we sat on the couch, running her fingers through my hair while saying how grown up I looked, lingering hugs that didn't feel like they used to. One morning, I woke up and found breakfast already on the table, pancakes, bacon, eggs, even fresh orange juice. She was sitting there, smiling, dressed in a tank top and shorts that barely covered anything. I asked if it was a special occasion. She said, "You're my occasion." I laughed awkwardly, unsure what to make of it. She watched me eat the entire time, every bite. That same week, she started coming into my room without knocking. Once, it was to bring folded laundry, another time, she asked if I could help her fix her laptop. Each time, she stood too close behind me, breathing lightly against my neck. I didn't say anything, but I felt everything. My heart pounded just from her presence. I hated how much I noticed. She talked about Michael Moore, but not in a way that felt right. She told me he hadn't touched her in almost a year, that he barely noticed her, that she sometimes wished she'd married someone else. Then she'd look at me in a way that wasn't maternal, more like evaluation, as if she was trying to see if I could be that someone else. One night, I was walking past her room and heard soft crying. I paused, knocked lightly. She told me to come in. She was sitting on the edge of the bed in her robe, eyes red. I asked if she was okay. She didn't answer, just looked up and opened her arms. I hesitated, then sat beside her. She leaned into me, wrapped her arms around me, and whispered, "I just don't want to feel alone anymore." Her robe had slipped partially off her leg, and I could feel the warmth of her body pressed into my side. I didn't move. I didn't trust myself to. Her hand moved up my arm, then rested on my chest, her fingers lightly drawing small circles. I felt frozen. She was crying, and I told myself I was just being supportive, but my body didn't believe that lie. She pulled away just slightly to look at me. Her eyes locked into mine, red and glassy, but intense. She said, "You're not a boy anymore." I didn't answer. She leaned in, lips close to my cheek, hovered for a breath too long, then she pulled back and smiled like she hadn't just tried to kiss me. "I should sleep," she said. I nodded and left. After that, she stopped pretending. One evening, we were doing dishes together, and she dropped a glass. It shattered near my feet, and she immediately dropped to clean it. I bent down to help, and she grabbed my hand, stared at me, and said, "You're always here when I need you." Her face was so close to mine, I could see the lines around her eyes, the way her lips parted just slightly. Nothing happened, but everything did. I started avoiding her again, and she noticed. She called me cold, distant, asked if I thought she was disgusting. I said, "No, of course not." But I was lying to myself and her. I didn't know what to think anymore. This wasn't some harmless flirtation, it was deliberate, and the part that scared me most was that I hadn't told her to stop. One afternoon, she came into the bathroom while I was shaving. She stood at the door and said, "Don't worry, I won't peek." But she didn't leave. She walked in, stood behind me, and watched me in the mirror. I tried to keep my eyes forward, but I could feel her. The air felt thick. Her fingertips brushed my back lightly. "You missed a spot," she said, then she reached out and ran her finger over my jawline. My hands trembled slightly as I rinsed the razor. I told her I was fine, that I could handle it, but she didn't move. "I like seeing you like this," she said, so confident, so grown. I didn't respond, couldn't. She stepped back, finally, and said, "I'll let you finish," her voice trailing like a tease. My head was spinning. That night, I stayed awake for hours, felt ashamed, angry, mostly at myself for not stopping her, for not confronting her, for not walking out and telling Michael everything. But I didn't. I kept it all inside, like a secret I didn't want to share, because a part of me didn't want it to end. We started having wine more often. Late-night talks became routine. The conversation shifted, more emotional, more intimate. She talked about her regrets, about how she never really felt seen by anyone but me, and I ate it up. I wanted to be needed, to be chosen, even if it was by the one person I shouldn't want that from. She started calling me her protector, said she felt safest with me. Once, she even joked, "You're more of a man than your father ever was." I didn't know how to respond. I just sipped my drink and looked away. The physical closeness continued. She'd touch my knee during stories, her hand would linger when passing me something. Once she adjusted my collar and left her hand on my chest for a moment too long. Each time, I told myself it was innocent, but it wasn't. I knew that, and so did she. My mind was a mess. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. I'd look at her across the dinner table and remember the way her hand felt on my back, the way she looked at me like I was the only person that mattered. I was drowning in a situation I didn't know how to escape, and the worst part was I wasn't sure I wanted to. I woke up to yelling downstairs. Michael was home for once, and they were arguing. I didn't hear every word, but the tone said everything. He accused her of something, probably cheating. She accused him of never being there, never caring. Then silence, heavy, suffocating silence. I stayed in my room until it was over. When I finally came down, he was gone. She was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes puffy, barely touching her coffee. She didn't say anything. I didn't either. That night, she knocked on my door, her voice soft. I asked if everything was okay. She said she didn't want to be alone. I told her to come in. She sat on the edge of my bed. Her robe was loose, hair damp, face washed clean. She looked raw, like she'd peeled off every layer. She didn't speak for a while, then she said, "I think it's over." I asked, "You and Michael?" She nodded. "He's been with someone else for months." I knew it, I just didn't want to admit it. I wanted to comfort her, I really did, but the way she looked at me made it impossible to separate the emotions. She didn't look like a mother mourning a marriage, she looked like a woman waiting for permission. I told her she didn't deserve that kind of betrayal. She moved closer. "You always say the right things," she whispered. "You make me feel seen." I felt her hand on my thigh, fingers light but deliberate. I froze. "I shouldn't feel this way," she said, "but I do, and I don't want to pretend anymore." I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My mind screamed at me to stop her, to get up, to leave the room, but my body stayed. She leaned in, brushed her lips against my cheek, then my jaw, then paused. "Tell me to stop," she said, voice trembling. I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. What happened next wasn't explosive or passionate, it was slow, quiet, and terrifying. Her hands moved like she knew exactly what she was doing. Mine followed like they'd been waiting. Every sound felt too loud, every breath felt like a sin. I wasn't thinking, I was reacting. And when it was over, we didn't speak. She rested her head on my chest, fingers tracing patterns across my skin. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, shame blooming fast. Eventually, she stood up, fixed her robe, and said, "This changes everything." I didn't respond, couldn't. She left my room, and I sat there, blank, like I just stepped outside my own life. The next morning, she acted normal, like nothing had happened, made coffee, asked what I wanted for breakfast. I couldn't even look at her. My stomach turned at the sound of her voice, not because I hated her, because I didn't. That was the problem. I didn't hate her. I hated myself. I spent the day out, walked through Willow Creek, drove aimlessly, tried to forget, but the memory replayed non-stop. Her face, her voice, her skin, every second lived behind my eyelids. When I got back, she was watching TV, like usual. She looked at me, eyes searching. I didn't stop, went straight to my room. Later that night, she knocked again. I didn't answer. "I just want to talk," she said. I stayed silent. After a minute, she walked away. I heard her door close. I felt sick. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. We barely spoke. She didn't knock again. I avoided her every chance I got, but the air between us was thick with what we didn't say. She started sending texts, small ones. "Are you okay? Can we talk?" I ignored them. Then one night, she sent, "I'm sorry if I made you feel like you had no choice." That broke me. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, ended up saying, "I didn't stop you." She replied, "But you didn't start it either." I didn't answer. What could I say? I stopped eating meals with her, left the house early, came back late, but I was still there, still under the same roof, still walking past her room every night with my heart in my throat. I considered telling someone, a friend, a therapist, but how do you explain something like this without becoming the villain? One night, I caught her crying again. I stayed behind my door this time. She didn't come to me. She cried alone, and somehow that made it worse. She tried to reset things, left notes with little apologies, bought my favorite snacks. One night, she even said, "Let's pretend none of this happened. We can go back to how it was." But we couldn't. There was no going back, not after what we did. I started planning to leave, made up an excuse about a summer internship. She didn't argue, just nodded. "Maybe that's best," she said. Her eyes were glassy again, but no tears fell. On my last night, she came to my door again. This time, I opened it. She looked tired, broken. "I just wanted to say goodbye the right way," she said. I nodded. She hugged me, too long, then she let go and walked away. I packed fast the next morning, didn't say much. She stood at the door while I loaded the car. "Be safe," she said. I nodded. That was it. As I drove away from Willow Creek, I looked in the mirror. She was still standing there, not waving, just watching, and I felt everything all over again: regret, confusion, shame, longing. I kept driving. Time passed, but the memory didn't. Even miles away, the weight of it clung to me. I buried myself in work, stayed out late, surrounded myself with distractions. I didn't talk about her. I told everyone I just needed space from home, from my parents' divorce, from the tension. No one asked questions, but the truth followed me everywhere. I'd see flashes of her in strangers, hear her voice in the quiet. Sometimes I'd wake up feeling her next to me, only to realize it was just the echo of something I shouldn't have allowed. I hated how much of my thoughts she occupied. She wasn't just my past, she had imprinted herself into everything. I didn't call, I didn't text, but she did. First, small updates: "Hope you're doing okay. The house feels empty without you." Then she sent a photo of the dog sleeping on my bed. I didn't respond. She stopped for a while, but eventually her silence felt louder than her messages ever did. One night, she sent, "Do you ever think about that night?" I stared at it for hours. I didn't reply. I wanted to lie and say I didn't, but that wouldn't change the truth. I thought about it all the time. A few weeks later, she called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, her voice calm, too calm. I'm not trying to pull you back in. I just need to hear that you're okay. I deleted it, but the sound of her voice stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. The guilt didn't fade, it evolved. I started blaming myself for not ending it sooner, for letting it go as far as it did. But when I tried to justify my silence, all I could come up with was cowardice. I let it happen. I let it go too far. And worse, I had moments where I didn't want it to stop. Months passed before I saw her again. It was unplanned. I came home to Willow Creek for a family gathering, assuming she wouldn't be there, but she was, standing in the kitchen like nothing had happened. Her eyes met mine. Nothing was said. She smiled politely. I nodded. That was it. We acted like strangers, even in the same room. She asked basic questions, I gave short answers. No one noticed anything strange. To them, we were just mother and son. Only we knew the truth buried beneath the small talk and the fake smiles. Later, we were briefly alone. She asked, "Are you happy?" I said, "I'm trying." She nodded. That's more than most people can say. I asked if she was okay. Her eyes dropped. "I'm surviving." Then silence. We didn't speak again for the rest of the visit. After that, she stopped reaching out. I assumed she finally accepted it was over, that we had both chosen distance over chaos. I was wrong. A year later, she messaged me again, "I miss you." I didn't know what she meant, missed me as her son, or missed what we did. I didn't ask. I didn't reply. I just blocked her number. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. She started reaching out through other ways, burner social accounts. Her messages grew more desperate, "You don't have to shut me out. We both wanted it, didn't we? I just need to know you don't hate me." That last one got to me, because I didn't. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I hated the situation, I hated the memory, but her? I didn't hate her, and that made everything worse. I considered therapy, but every time I tried to explain the story in my head, it sounded unreal. I felt like saying it out loud would make it permanent, irreversible. So I stayed quiet. I convinced myself distance was the solution. If I never went back, if I never responded, it would eventually fade. But trauma doesn't work like that. It mutates. I'd start dating and find myself pulling away when things got too close. I didn't trust my own instincts anymore. I doubted my boundaries. I questioned whether I was broken. Years passed. I built a life that looked normal, good job, safe apartment, friends, but I never told anyone the full truth. I'd mentioned that my relationship with Sarah was strained, but I never said why. That part of me stayed locked away. Then one day, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address, but I knew it was from her. I almost didn't open it. Curiosity won. It wasn't long, just a few lines. "I'm sorry for everything. I know what I did was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you live a life without shadows. That's all I ever wanted for you." I burned the letter, not out of anger, but because I didn't want to keep it. I didn't want a reminder of something I already carried every day. That chapter was closed, but the impact wasn't. Now, when people ask about my past, I choose my words carefully. I don't lie, but I don't give it all away. Some truths are too heavy to share casually. I still dream about her sometimes, not in the way I used to, not in desire, but in confusion, in guilt, in grief. I dream about the version of her that should have protected me instead of using me to escape her own pain. And even though I moved on, in the quietest corners of my mind, I still feel the scar, not because I want to remember, but because forgetting would feel like letting it happen all over again.